Down. No, we're just live. Okay, cool. Welcome to another edition of the Marketing Trench. We are having technical difficulties. We're waiting for Dustin to come in here. But we're going to go ahead and get started. And this is actually going to be a really cool conversation because rarely do you get this kind of insight. And really what we're going to talk about, I don't know what Dustin's message here means, chutes and ladders, but essentially, we're going to talk about questions that people have about the market crashing. Can home prices stay this way? Are they going to keep going up? You got interest rates going up. What's going to happen with interest rates? Should I buy? Should I wait? Josh Lewis is my business partner at Buywise Mortgage, and Jeb Smith is a realtor with Coldwell Banker, I think, in Huntington Beach. And Josh and Jeb have Jeb has a very successful YouTube channel with a lot of traffic on it. I think you're 50,000 plus subscribers now, Jeb.
Just short. Yep.
Okay. And Josh and Jeb do a 2-hour live once a week, and it's basically an Ask Me Anything. And so they're literally fielding the questions. They typically have about 2,000 viewers, 250 people on at any time for 2 straight hours. And you guys get absolutely peppered with these questions. So I think we're going to have a conversation about that. And as a professional, mortgage or real estate professional, what kind of conversations are you having with your consumers when they're asking these questions? So, Dustin, welcome to the show.
My goodness.
I don't know what your intention was, but I just laid out what I think we're going to talk about. So,
great. Let's just do it. Let's go.
Cool.
So, hey, let me start with this. At any given time, home ownership in the United States is plus or minus 65%. You know, in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the government decided that home ownership could solve everything, even if you did it with terrible loans, we got up to about 69% home ownership. After the Great Recession, it went all the way down to about 62%, but 64 to 67% of U.S. households at any given time choose to be homeowners. Homeowners have 44 times greater net worth than renters. So for the reasons of just preference of wanting to own their home and financial of the long-term benefits of that, nearly everyone, when they reach adulthood and start a family, even if it's a family like my wife and I have 2 and a French bulldog, you want to own your home. So the question here really becomes, is now a good time to buy? And going back to, it was even before COVID, we were already seeing, especially in places like YouTube, this whole, oh, the market's going to crash, the crash is coming, we're going to crash. I have a client we just finished a refinance for that she bought 3 homes last year, and she stopped buying in 2017 because she thought the market was at a peak. So you look at it, it is a big question. Jeb and I answer these questions every week, and there are people that show up to that live that every week say, nope, I'm out, I'm not buying. They are still there in a YouTube live to ask and answer questions about buying a home because their brain is still telling them they want to. They're saying the current market isn't right. So it's a ton of what Jeb and I go through, and in terms of talking through numbers. So from that end, Dustin, I know you're always the question guy. What specific questions did you have related to this idea of, is the market going to crash and everyone's going to lose all their money in real estate at this point?
Well, the first question I would have based on what you just said is, what percentage of the market right now owns a home? Is it still 64 to 67%?
It's a little over 65 right now.
Okay. So in one sense, there's no reason to think that any fewer people or any more people own homes than have ever owned before.
Correct.
Is there a trajectory by which we see that number is going to drop as a result of anything impacting, say, let's just start with the mortgage side first. Is there any reason to think that number could drop in the coming 5 years?
Well, if you see since the last downturn, we've had incredibly tight underwriting standards. If we were in a format where we had a bunch of slides here to show you, you guys have seen the one of the percentage of the nine or whatever, however many of the total trillions of loans are outstanding, how few of them are to sub 620 credit scores. The median credit score is way up into the sevens. I think it's like 760 on current loans. So underwriting standards are still very tight. It doesn't mean that lower credit scores are excluded. We have a client that you referred to us that we closed last week with a 570 credit score. So those things do happen, but the vast majority of the market is incredibly well qualified and incredibly strong financial position. So could we see a further tightening of that? Maybe we get rid of 3.5% and 3% and 5% down. That could decrease the able demand. So one of the things Jeb and I talk about every week on the show is home prices always come back to supply and demand, but demand isn't as simple as just demand. You know, the four of us here would all love to own a home on the beach in Malibu, right? It doesn't mean that we are demand for beach homes in Malibu because none of us can afford them. So you get to that question, that affordability comes into play. How many people are qualified, have the down payment, all of that. So could it decrease? But it would decrease. So the answer is yes, but it would come off of even tighter lending standards, which are the tightest lending standards we've had in a long, long time.
Okay, so then my question would be for Jeb, from Jeb's side, one of the things we keep hearing is there's no inventory because builders can't build or aren't building. And you can take that however you want to. That's a politically charged bit of terrain there. But do you see from your side of things with the millennial generation wanting to buy, the number of millennials wanting to buy, and also I would say foreign, we've got funds coming in, investment funds, hedge funds, whatever, buying up huge chunks of real estate. Do you see a drop in the inventory that could lead to fewer than 67% of people being able to own?
I assume you mean an increase in inventory, right? So that demand slows and less people are buying, right? Because I mean, any house being sold is going to be purchased by someone else, right? It's like a stock. There's always a buyer and a seller on either side. You never just walk away from your house and then no one owns it. But there's a lot going on in that question. I mean, the first part is, yeah, we do have a lack of homes being built for many different reasons. But at the present time, what do we say, Josh? 500,000 homes have to be built on top of what is normally being built in order to correct the problem.
In the next decade, over the next decade, it would have to happen every year.
Right. So
what specifically would have to happen every year?
They would have to build 500,000 more homes than they're currently building on average each year for the next 10 years.
There's like a 6 million home deficit. Is that's kind of the number that I've heard?
4 to 6, depending on who you read. So the question is, where does the supply come from at the moment? And that's the thing that Josh and I and many people I talk with struggle with, because it's not like we're looking at the market going, hey, this is awesome, this is going to continue forever. It's, look, affordability is probably becoming an issue for a lot of people out there. I mean, here locally where we are, it's 26 or 27% more expensive to own the same home this year than it was last year, right? Because of an increase in prices and an increase in interest rates. So it's significantly more expensive to own that home, but yet there's people lined up to do it. I mean, I put an offer in on a property last week and there were 67 offers on the property, 6-7. And this was $1 million property. So I struggle with where that inventory comes from. Yeah, you're going to get some from forbearance and not from forbearance that people are, significantly distressed, foreclosures, whatever. It's, hey, look, I've been through this. Gas prices are higher now. I've been stretching myself in many different ways. My payment is now adjusting to this amount because the lender is adding that forbearance on. I just can't afford to pay this anymore. Therefore, I need a less expensive house, or I need to go rent something in order to do that. So that's going to create a little bit of inventory, but how many of those are out there? That's the unknown. And until something happens with inventory and or rates rise, to a point where people just say, I'm not buying anymore, you're not going to see much change in the housing market, at least in my opinion. So that 65, 66% or whatever the number was Josh threw out, I don't really see that changing. And I don't know really how that number can increase, significantly either, because there's not enough property out there for people to buy for that number to increase, right? So everybody that is buying, for the most part, are buying an existing home that was already for sale, or that was already built, right? The new construction is minimal with regards to adding to that percentage.
Right.
And
So really what I'm looking at, let me just clarify because it might have been a bad question. So what I'm looking at is the trend of hedge funds and investment firms buying up property that individual families would otherwise buy. And as that trend continues, because rents are high, right? So they can get a pretty impressive ROI, rates are low, rents are high. That means that the number of Americans who could potentially purchase is going to decrease over time. And that means that fewer than 67% of households will be able to buy. That's the
I think
question.
that's fair. I mean, that's fair to some extent. I think, well, I don't, Josh, do you know the number of the percentage of homes that they own? I want to say
Well,
8%, but that seems really high.
And
no,
what I would say, Scott, is also historically, when we've seen a downturn in homeownership rates, it's due to homeowners losing their homes to foreclosure. So
Sure.
the big picture, for you to think that's going to appreciably decrease, you have to believe there's a wave of foreclosures coming at a time when 40% of homeowners have 50% or more equity in their home. There's
well,
9.9 trillion of tappable equity. There's so much equity in homes that a giant wave of foreclosures is incredibly unlikely to happen.
yeah, for it, I think where Dustin is kind of going, and I don't know if this is off the Redfin report, but I've seen a couple of reports in the last couple of months that says that approximately 33% of homes in a first-time homebuyer price range were purchased by institutional investors
Right.
in the last year. And I don't know if that's a lot higher or a lot lower, but that seems to be. And then we've also kind of have is I might be wrong on this, and you could correct me, Josh, but a lot of this, some of this is regional because you guys are in Southern California. There is no more land to build homes. Flyover country. I don't know why builders, but I know there was last year or the year before, there was a tract of homes, 163 homes that were built, Central Texas, and they sold the whole thing to an institutional investor, like the
And
entire lot.
so the yields don't. So Jeb and I here in Southern California don't see that. I don't know that you see it anywhere in California because rent yields in California are low relative to the astronomical prices, and that's not uncommon in a lot of places. But you're saying flyover country, anywhere in the Midwest, lots of parts of the South, investors can go in and get a nice percentage of the rents they would get in California at 50%, at 30% of the purchase price. So when you're looking for yields as an institutional investor, it's in a lot of those parts of the country. And it also goes back to, Jeb, you can jump in on this, but the building is not a big portion of the market here for us. We have some out in the Inland Empire. You've got some in the Sacramento area, some going up through Central California. But for the most part, new construction is not a huge part of the equation in Southern California like it is in other parts of the country.
But even then, let's talk about what they're building here in Southern California. Is it affordable?
No.
Right. I mean, so yeah, the average home, I can't, I mean, again, I'm just talking off the cuff here, but most of the new construction in Orange County is in Irvine. Those properties, are coming out at $1.5 million, $2 million on average for a newly built home. So it's not your entry level buyer buying these properties. So then we talk about affordable housing, and I'm not talking affordable housing in the sense of like Section 9, but just housing where the median, the person that makes the median income can live, in a property or purchase a property. Here in Orange County, I don't know what the number is exactly, but Huntington Beach is required to build so many units over the next however many years just to meet demand with regards to the affordable housing. So, they're trying to we're trying to get more supply. Like as of today, I think we have 94 active homes in Huntington Beach, a town of 200,000 plus people. So 94 active listings, and you add, any new construction that might be coming on, a portion of that has to meet affordable housing guidelines. So the majority of it's not even available to the person or the people, the families, individuals who want to buy it. So it's just, there's so many dynamics playing into why homes can't be built for certain price points and what have you. And it just, it just accelerates the problem as a whole.
There's the other problem is the regulatory cost. Well, you got a couple of problems. We had supply chain issues through COVID, and that's kind of working itself out. I don't know if lumber and supplies have come down or not yet. But I think the National Association of Home Builders said that last year the average cost to break ground on a single family home was north of $93,000, up $10,000 from 2 years prior. So you've got almost $100,000 in regulatory and environmental regulation costs just to break ground on one home. So that's without even supplies, labor, and then the builder making a profit. So this whole idea of entry-level first-time homebuyer home, new construction doesn't sound like it's even a great option. It seems like resale in any market that's $150,000 or less, or $200,000 and less, it almost sounds like you can't even do new construction under $200,000.
Well,
because there's no margins there.
Here's two examples. Jeb mentioned Irvine. I have a set of first-time buyers, and so this tells you the difference between California and other parts of the country. First-time buyers, they're buying a condo in Irvine. $1,050,000 is the purchase price. $500-600 HOA. They're putting 20% down. Combined, they make about $250,000, 800 credit scores, and they have the 20% down, their own money. And the reason why I even mention that is people say, where are these buyers going to come from? Well, California home ownership rate is at 55%, and it's been down as low as like 51, 52%, and that's largely an affordability issue. But so people say, where are these people coming from? Who makes money like that? The answer is we have a lot of them, and there are plenty of them to buy these homes. The other flip side example I was going to give, I have a client who just got a property under contract in Menifee yesterday, and 7 years ago, a house in Menifee would have been $200,000. Today, $550,000 with $185 HOA, and those clients, they're almost like the Inland Empire version of the people here in Irvine. Both of them make good money. Husband makes $100,000, wife makes $185,000. They're putting 10% down, and they still have a fairly big payment that a lot of first-time buyers wouldn't be comfortable with. In 2003, I bought my first single-family residence that I still live in to this day, $580,000. I almost choked paying $580,000. Now you're telling entry-level buyers going, 90 miles inland that they get to pay $550,000 with an HOA. And granted, it's 20 years later, incomes are higher than where they were in 2003, but it's a big number.
It's a huge number. And one of my concerns here, and this kind of gets us a little bit away from the topic because I want to really talk about 2022. But one of my concerns is that housing supply in the long run is a assembly line process, right? Like you get in at a low price home, you build equity, you sell that home, you use the equity to get the next home, the next home, the next home. And if we have disruption in that supply chain or in that assembly line process, there aren't going to be people theoretically down the road to get into that middle home or that high-end home because they never got into the starter home to begin with, or they're stuck in the starter home because it was a $1 million starter home and it's hard to move up from there, right? But I'm more thinking about what's going to happen in 2022. And what I hear you guys saying is, yeah, homes are insanely expensive. Also, people make a lot of money, and it's like
enough people make a lot of money. Not everyone. Yeah. So we're saying here we have higher renter rates of non-home ownership in California and other parts of the country. That's not necessarily a good thing. What it says is that low rates of affordability. Black Knight threw out the number in their February report. It was the average buyer in California has a 43% debt to income ratio, and that's like 15 to 20% higher than the next most expensive areas of the country. So you could, that's really unhealthy. Okay, well, is it? We have the highest prices and the highest appreciation anywhere in the country. So if it were unhealthy, meaning unsustainable, couldn't continue, you wouldn't see those numbers. So I would say in California, we probably do continue to see lower rates of home ownership, but that doesn't necessarily mean values are coming down. And none of this, it's funny, the thing that Jeb and I get always on the show, probably once a week, some troll pops up in there and says, well, you guys are perma bulls. You love this, these high prices. And you're like, That's the last thing in the world. I got an email with another realtor yesterday after she wrote the 7th or 8th offer for a spectacularly well qualified move up buyer that we're working with. And it said, I pray for the day of a normal market when you compete against 2 to 5 offers versus every listing is 20 plus offers that you're competing against. What people don't realize is, and I know your audience here is more professionals than consumers, but we want like Goldilocks, like the middle of the road, where you want 3 to 5% appreciation every year, rates low so that there's some refis mixed in, but not so low that you're buried under refis, not too high that it stops people from purchasing and there's no refinances. So no one in real estate or mortgage is loving the current market. We would like affordability to be high, home ownership rates to be high, and requirements and the guidelines for loans to enable more people to buy than are able to buy right now. So it's a tough thing. My thing is, I don't get to set the rules for the game. We have to understand them better than anyone else so we can play the game better.
Are you saying don't hate the player, hate the game?
something like that. Don't hate the guy that plays it better than you. How about that?
Okay, so of the last 6 recessions, okay, because people are thinking there's a recession coming, and we can get into that in a minute. But of the last 6 recessions, only 2 of them have resulted in a correction, a substantial correction in the housing market. The first one,
those 2 were caused by
foreclosure. That's where I was going. So one of them was caused by the savings and loan scandal, and one of them was caused by the subprime crisis. So my question for you guys is, do you see a similar house of cards scenario where anywhere in the sort of mechanistic scheme of real estate, there's like a weak pillar that could cause the whole thing to collapse?
Recessions don't cause decreases in home prices. We've had 2 horrific corrections in home prices that have caused recessions. So there's nothing about a recession that makes me worry about home prices. Probably a big thing that people who weren't watching the market in 2005, 2006, 2007, most people were just getting rich, either consumers buying and flipping and doing cash out refinances, or professionals doing a lot of business. But if you were watching, the big narrative at that time was nationwide home prices have never decreased on a year-over-year basis. Well, those of us in Southern California said, cool story. I don't really care because I've seen it happen about 6 times so far in California, so I know that it can happen. So we know a correction can happen. We've only had one crash in Southern California real estate, or California real estate, and that was led by that. But led by housing. It wasn't caused by a recession then leading to this big crash. Housing was in a place that it caused a giant recession.
So are you making a division between a correction and a recession?
Yes.
They're absolutely two completely separate things. But anyone talking about a crash, you can dismiss them out of hand. There's no world in which we can have a crash in home prices in the United States, absent some type of world war, giant terrorist attacks, Russia launches a couple nukes at us. Like literally, it cannot happen. But we absolutely can have a correction, and probably will. So the question is when and from what point and what does it look like? And the reason why I'm saying,
let's define it, because I need numbers here. So what's a correction? What's a crash?
It's probably similar to what you're looking at in equities right now. More than 20% would be a crash.
Okay, so prices could correct up to 19% of what they currently are, and you would say that's a possible future. But you would say prices will not correct more than 20%. That's a virtually impossible future unless the whole thing just goes to hell.
Correct. And even at that, where it was
Bigger
going
problems.
is one of the things that people pointed out when saying that even Southern California was saying, oh, home prices don't go down. They're sticky to the upside. That's a fact. They are true. And you say, why are home prices sticky to the upside? Because if your neighbor sells at a lower price than the last sale, you just decide to stay there. You don't sell. The only people that sell when home prices start to decrease are people that have to sell. So maybe there's a good reason why you have to sell. Your employer needs you to go to New York and they're going to pay your selling costs and you don't care what that house sells for. Most people actually do. So they will just hunker down and wait for a better economy and a better market. So when you see that, Why did we have the huge decrease in 2008? Why did we have the big decrease in the S&L crisis? There were so many homes on the market at that time that were bank owned because people lost their homes. So you have to tell me. So during those downturns in Southern California, the big feature was that 30 to 40% of homes available in the MLS were bank owned. In
Right.
2007, 2008, it was 70 to 80%. So
Right.
for you to tell me that we're going to have a giant correction like that, give me the recipe for that many bank-owned properties when we have people with really high credit scores and tons of equity in their home. You know, Jeb hinted at it earlier. These people may have a forced sale, but you don't have a short sale. You don't have a
Right.
foreclosure.
Because
A
of the
person
equity.
with $300,000 of equity doesn't let that thing go away. So your neighbor may lose his job or get divorced or have something bad happen in their life that they have to sell. So they sell for $20,000 or $50,000 less than the last sale. No one else in your neighborhood is going to go, hey, honey, let's go throw a for sale sign out. It's
But
not going to lead to that cascade.
But one thing you mentioned earlier, the question you had, Dustin, are how are the pillars that are holding this thing up? So let's talk about it. So you got mortgages, right? The mortgages seem to be as well underwritten as they've ever been with regards to, the standards in which, buyers have to qualify, what they have to go through in order to get a loan. Down payments are, at a record high. Credit scores, we mentioned what the majority of loans being underwritten are 760 plus credit scores. I was trying to find the slide. I actually have it saved here on my computer because I was going to use it in a video soon. But you've got, those are really the key components of the housing market. In addition, Josh mentioned it earlier, equity. The average homeowner has $185,000 of tappable equity on top of the 20% they need to tap it. So you've got, the majority of homeowners out there having, the ability to sit tight, maybe even to borrow some money if they get in a position where, that they're financially strained. Now, the real question is, what could change the housing market? What could create supply? Earlier, we said nothing really, but you did mention or hint at that hedge funds, right? So what if all these hedge funds decided we don't want to own real estate, and then they put a bunch of supply on the market? That could change the dynamic, but at the same time, they'd only be killing themselves because they'd be putting so much supply on the market and hurting themselves with regards to prices. So I don't think that they could put it all out there at once. They could gradually release supply, and that doesn't create crashes. That creates slowdowns. That creates potential corrections. And I think that honestly is needed. It needs, you can't have a situation where there's 67 offers on a property. It's not normal. It's not good. It's not fun. It sucks. It does in many ways. And it's not just because I feel like I'm out there writing offers and showing property, not getting it. No, it sucks emotionally. It sucks in, just beating buyers up in many ways. And there's just, and the next one, here's the thing is the next one comes on the market and 65, of the people of the 66 didn't get it, or 66 of the 67, whatever the number is, they're still trying to buy that property. And it continues to fuel the fire.
What about the shadow inventory we keep hearing about of bank-owned properties or government-owned or whoever owns it from the recession that's just been sitting out? What if that came onto the market?
Show it to, where is that? They've been talking about that for 15 years.
And yet from the lows, those prices have quadrupled, and yet they're still holding it in this phantom room where these homes have been,
it's in China,
sequestered away. It's silly. It was silly when people talked about it. And granted, I'm not going to name names on this, but Scott called me when COVID breaks off in 2019, or was it 2020, and says, hey, I was on a call with this guy and this guy, smart guys that actually do very well in this business. That shadow inventory, they're really worried about. Like, what in God's name are you talking about? There is no shadow inventory, and there's no bank-owned or hedge fund-owned stuff where they're going to start dumping this property. If you remember back in 2010, 2011, 2012, when we first started seeing hedge funds buying in, the plan was, hey, we don't have really good places to park money. We can get these distressed assets really low using our large bank accounts. We can fix them up, which will have a lower cost doing that at scale. We can rent them for a number of years. When the market recovers, we sell them, we make a bunch of money, we move on to our next thing. Here we are 12 years later, and they haven't sold any. They're buying them at a more rapid clip than ever, at higher prices than ever. It's a good business model.
Yeah,
When you're
yeah.
trying,
It would be insane to argue that a hedge fund is going to crash, that hedge funds are going to crash our market, because that would be totally against their interest, and they're in the business to make money, and their trajectory seems to be on buying. But I am curious. Let's just assume crash is out, 20% correct, out, not going to happen. Anything above 20%, not going to happen. Let's talk about the correction, that 1 to 19% range. In 2022, do you guys see a correction? And if so, what would cause it?
No, well, I'll start. I don't see a correction happening this year. I think, if anything, towards the fall, late summer, you might see things moderate a little bit. You less craziness on the houses instead of 60 plus offers. I mean, obviously that's an anomaly, right? So instead of, let's go more normal.
but is it?
Well, I don't know.
You read a lot of offers. How anomalous is that?
I mean, dude, if it like, I can't do that every time.
So is that exhaustion, or is there going to be a slight decrease in demand if rates keep going up?
I think a little bit of both.
People are just going to wait.
Both. I mean, people are going to get to the point where they're not going to do this because of how crazy. I mean, they're just going to get, I know buyers that have said, you know what, I'm just waiting. I'm not going to do this. So that's a piece of it, right? So it's going to, I think it has to slow down. I think it has, right? I mean, I'm guessing merely here, but it's going to slow down at some point. Right. But here's the thing. If prices drop by, let's give a number. Let's say 5%. What do you think happens to all of those buyers that have been trying to get into the market? Right? They are still buyers. They're not going to decide not to buy a house just because, they didn't get it the first time. They're still buyers. They're still thinking about home ownership. It's just a matter of when the right property comes up. So I think a reduction in prices, at least here in California, gets those buyers that maybe said, you know what, I'm just going to have a seat. I'm not going to do this. They're going to get back in the game. And in areas like the South and some of these areas, the Sun Belt, if you will, where funds have been buying up property, you see a pullback in prices there. The buying gets more egregious from their side, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of cash, a lot of equities sitting on the sidelines still. And I'm not just talking homeowners. I'm talking about big players that have money. And I think, if we're talking inflation, we're talking hedges against inflation. Real estate's clearly the better option there. And so I think that's a place for them to park money. So I think if you do see a pullback in prices, it's not a pullback that continues to go down. At some point, there is a level that it reaches where buyers say, I'm back in, and maybe prices don't shoot up from there, but it stops the decline.
And what Jeb said is the important part. There's the supply demand imbalance is so great that if you saw a start to a correction, there's a lot of buyers here to back that up. Is it at 5%? Is it 10%? Is it at 15%? The more of a decrease you see, the less likely people are to jump in. People start getting nervous. Even if you wanted to buy in and you said, hey, that $1 million house, I'd be a buyer at 900. If that $1 million house drops to 900, it's a little bigger bet to actually step in and be the buyer. But the supply demand imbalance is so great right now that I can't envision a scenario where we go from 65 offers, say a normal one. What would you say is a normal property? Jeb, when was the last time you got a listing that got less than 10 offers?
Oh, it's been a while. Like I listed a property on Tuesday, right? Westminster, border Huntington Beach, good area, great neighborhood. It's the major things of the home have been completed: roof, furnace, water heater, that sort of thing. Cosmetic upgrades, it needs love, right? It's original from 50 years ago in the inside. You could live in it, but it needs everything. So as of today, as of this call, at the moment, I have 9 offers on the property. It was listed Tuesday. We're going offers through the weekend. And out of those 9 offers, 3 of them are all cash and over 10% over the asking price. So we're over 10% of the asking price on I don't know, 6 of the 9. So, I mean, by the end of the weekend, this property is going to have, I don't know, 25, 30 offers. And there's one across the way. So this one's listed at $1,050,000, which is the right price for it. There's one catty corner in a different neighborhood that's the same model that's been completely remodeled. That one's on the market for 1,650. So that one's $600,000 more than my house, completely remodeled. So you've got people, and that one just came on the market today. So people are going to look at that now and go, hey, I don't need $600,000 for my house to look like that. I could probably do it for $250,000. So hell, this house could be $1.4 million at this point. I mean, so who knows where the price goes?
So to my point, what I was saying there is, how much demand can you lose and still have more than enough demand to keep prices going up? The answer is
you
a
could
lot.
lose 90%
a lot.
of it. If you've got if you've got 60 offers on a property, you could lose 90% of the demand and still get a strong offer on the property.
If you got 20 offers, lose 90% of the demand, and you still have a multiple offer situation where you're pitting two people against each other for a higher value.
Right. Let me see if I want to pivot this conversation a little bit, and it might end up sounding the same, but you two have a very, very unique insight into the market that almost no other professional has. You field more questions from consumers than almost anybody I know, like hundreds and hundreds a week. So for the next few minutes, 15 minutes or so that we're here, and I don't know if this ends up turning into the exact same question, but we have mortgage and real estate professionals usually listen to the show, and I want to try to maybe address what are some of the questions that you're hearing over and over again, maybe some that surprise you and some that don't surprise you. And this is either about financing or about inventory in the real estate side. And what kind of answers are you giving these people? And I imagine that you get people that are looking at buying investment homes in this market and buying single family homes and move up and move down. So for the other professionals that are here, what are some of the most common questions that you're getting, and what kind of answers are you giving? I guess another way to say it is, how can we respond to these questions that you're hearing over and over again? What are some ways that you're responding that maybe can help other lenders and real estate agents keep those deals alive, or keep the consumers engaged, or maybe quell some of their fears?
Jeb, what are the top three questions that you would think that we get over and over?
I'll say the top one, but then I'll clarify a little bit and let you answer the question, because obviously it's something we get a lot, is should I buy now or should I wait? Right? Probably the most common question in some form or fashion. It might not come across exactly that. Often it is that exact verbiage, but it might come in a different way. But let's be clear. It's not always a great time to buy a home. It's not. There's a lot of factors that need to be made in order to come to that decision, at least in my opinion. One of those at the moment is you need time, right? We're at a point in the market where prices are high. And I think it's important to mention this. As professionals in the industry, you need to start thinking, okay, we've been on an upward trajectory since 2011-ish, so 10 years or so. Most of the major organizations, communities, Fannie Mae, Zillow, Redfin, all of those guys have revised their reports to say we're, going to go somewhere between 10 and 16, 17% this year with regards to appreciation. I think the latest one was Redfin at 22% or something crazy. But even Fannie Mae came out last week and said 11%, and they were like at 3%. So they've revised it. But with that taken into account, if you're thinking of buying a house now because you've heard that home prices are going up and you want a piece of that appreciation and whatever, but your time horizon's short, you probably shouldn't buy a home. If you're thinking, hey, my family's growing, I'm getting married, whatever the reason is, it's the right time in your life to become a homeowner, and you have a time horizon of 7, 10 years, I think fantastic. It's a great time to buy a property, but you need to have that mindset. You need money in the bank. You need to not be stretching yourself. I mean, there's a lot of things, and it's not because I think a crash is coming. These are just common sense things that you need to think about. There's a lot of FOMO out there. There's a lot of people making irrational decisions, quick decisions, because the market is moving so quickly. And it's just, you need to take a step back, even in a fast market, and say, okay, am I doing this for the right reasons? So with that said, Josh, most common question, should I buy now? Should I wait? What else outside of that? Interest rates, a question on interest rates, where are interest rates going?
It's usually a version of, I'm in escrow on new construction. It's going to close in 3 months, 4 months, 9 months. Should I lock my interest rate?
Yeah.
and it really tough one to answer right now. But the best answer is stop listening to people talking and look at what the markets are doing. So 10-year in December was as low, the 10-year treasury was as low as like 134, and today we're at 2.01, somewhere along the lines. Last I looked at it a couple hours ago. Mortgage rates are up much higher than that. But if you watch the talking heads, they're telling you rates are going to go higher. They're going to go higher. You're seeing all this inflation. Inflation is the biggest driver of higher interest rates. But if the markets thought that inflation was a long-term concern, so let's not go into the transitory debate, which obviously ended up, we're looking at a year of elevated inflation. We were going to be looking at those numbers to start dipping just based off of year-over-year comparisons. We're going to start getting better as the really low numbers from 2020 fall off, and we're just comparing to higher numbers in 2021. Well, now we have the confounding factor of everything going on in Ukraine, which is going to cause fuel prices to go higher. Everyone's aware of that. Everyone knows how much that impacts inflation. You also have shipping supply chains not getting better due to the ports being shut down through large parts of Europe. Things that you just don't even take into account. Ukraine being the largest provider, like 95% of all neon gas, which you're like, cool, I don't need a neon sign, I'm not Las Vegas. Well, that goes into the chips that go into your car that can't be sold. And I don't know if you've ever seen the pictures of acres of Broncos sitting in Detroit just waiting for their chips before they can get sold. So all of that cascade of things gives us a bunch of uncertainty. Does that last for 6 months? Does it last for 12 months? Who knows? But if you look at the 10-year treasury, people who are betting with their money, they're saying, I don't care that CPI was 7.4% last week and that you're telling me my 10-year yield is a negative 5.4% because I'm only getting 2% when inflation's at 7.4. They're saying, I do not believe, me betting with real money at the Chicago Board of Trade is saying, I don't believe that inflation is a long-term issue. There are bigger things that will continue the longer term deflationary trend. So is that 1 year? Is it 3 years? I don't know, but the markets are telling you rates are not going appreciably higher from here. Can they go higher? Yes, they can. Do we want them to? No, but for the time being, it's probably good for the real estate market. If we were still at 2.75%, does the 66 offer home have 166 offers? I don't know what the number is. I don't want to know. I don't think Jeb wants to know.
I don't.
Josh, crystal ball, December, where are the rates at?
A little lower than right now, but still higher than they're going to be long term. And I would expect them to be lower still next year. At some point, we're going to get a recession. You asked about it earlier. It is coming. The Fed is going to hike. They're going to do it repeatedly. And they have a history of, just like we had way too much stimulus in 2020, 21, and finally taking it away here in 2022, we're going to get too much of a hard foot on the brakes, and we're going to get a recession. Recessions are also deflationary. The stuff in Europe is going to work its way through. There are a couple structural differences of things that are unlikely to change post-COVID, post-Ukraine world that could lead to rates being higher than they otherwise would be. But we are still in a long-term downtrend in interest rates. If you go back.
But so we get the recession, the Fed pumps the brakes too hard, rates go up to, let's just say 5%. You think it'll be 5 or you think 4.5?
The Fed raising rates will start bringing rates down. Absent what's going on in Ukraine and those inflationary pressures, the Fed raising rates is already fully priced into the market. The Fed knows they're raising 4 times for at least one. The markets know that the Fed is raising 4 times minimum this year for at least 1%, already baked into the market.
Recession. Do you think the recession impacts wages?
Depends on what part of the market you're in. This stuff of Target running ads. I mean, it's a BS ad that overstates it, but the wages starting at $24 an hour, that stuff will shake out. For high demand, IT professionals, people in demand industry, nurses, that type of stuff. No, it's not going to decrease wages.
Yeah. So that creates an interesting split, because it may be in Scott called it flyover America, middle America, where more of the jobs are probably Target jobs, Walmart jobs, that sort of thing. Maybe the rates go down, but wages go down specifically. But maybe in California, where the jobs are more tech oriented, they're professional. It's the kind of people who are making, Josh, your earlier point, 100,000 each. They've got $200,000 plus in income every single year. Those wages hold, or maybe they even go up because the economy is moving in
But
that direction.
Well, I also think there's an interesting thing that happened with migration through the COVID thing. There's a lot of really high-end paying jobs that can be done remotely, that there was a lot of flow from the coasts inland. So there's a lot of money from high wage earning people that are moving into Tennessee, Texas, Arizona, Nevada. So you're kind of spreading that out a little bit. So you're right. While there may be some service level jobs that could have wage decreases, there's still money in there because we're practically a virtual employment. There's a lot of the employment force is virtual now. There's a good there's more of it than there was 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
that's going to be an interesting thing that'll kind of will level some things out.
I'm
Won't hit
trying to
communities
get
as
my
much.
head around a future where potentially the rates are higher than they are now, but wages are lower than they are now because we're in a recession, which means the cash available for a monthly mortgage, is less on a per family basis. And then what does that do to the market? But what I'm hearing is that scenario probably won't exist unless you're in a service level job. Is that accurate?
I think that's fair, but let me ask the question. Like, if your wages do decrease, for example, but you've locked in a 30-year fixed at 2.5%, and you live in flyover America, is what we're calling it. What does it matter? Like,
It
you're
doesn't
just maybe
matter. I'm talking
you're
about
not. No, I'm just saying out loud. Like, you're maybe you're no longer a home buyer, but you've got security of having the mortgage already fixed. And most people, like, that's the problem, in my opinion, with right now, is so many people are worried day to day about what the house price is worth. It's so I mean, it's like a stock. It like, if you sit there and look at your stock account, every day, you're going to go crazy. Same thing with house prices. Too many people are like, I'm afraid to buy my house and next week it's worth 5% less. First off, it's not going to happen. Secondly, why? Why do you care if you have a longer term time horizon and you're comfortable with the payment? Otherwise, it does not matter. You think, I mean, I'm in real estate and I can't tell you, I mean, from 2011 until probably 2018 or 19, when I decided to refinance again for the first time since then, I don't know that I really followed my home value at all. I mean, I had an idea of what it was because I was selling houses, but I didn't really care. The problem is now everybody, it seems to be the talking point of whether or not you should buy a house because of what's going to happen tomorrow. How about worrying about, can you afford the payment, worrying about your family, and focusing on why homeowners have, 44 times greater net worth than those of renters?
I think a really, really good story about this is, Josh, the one that you told me this weekend. It was your friend's parents. You'd been telling them to buy a house forever. They finally decided to pull the trigger in 2006. Tell that story, because that is the extreme example of what Jeb just described.
Yep.
And I think that's the perfect answer to anybody's question about buying or waiting. And is the
So,
market going to crash?
1,000%. In 2006, we had been telling these folks, hey, you need to buy a house for like 5 years. So the market's good in 2001, 2002, 2003. For whatever reason, 2006, they're in their early 40s, and they said, hey, we got to buy a house. I said, well, it's a little bit dangerous right now. Home price is very elevated, a lot of crappy loans out there, people not sitting on much equity. And said, don't care. We're in our early 40s. We want to own our home. I said, okay. So we didn't do a crazy loan. The 228s, the 327s, even like a 5/1 ARM at that time, we put them into a 30-year fixed. They borrowed some money from their 401k, put that money down. And I think they paid low sixes, 610, 620, somewhere here in Orange County, which was a lot of money at the time. At one point, that house was down to maybe 310, 320. They lost half the value. They did not care. They stayed there. They made their mortgage payment every month. And by 2011, 2012, it was back up to maybe 450 or 500. So they were above water. They didn't owe more than what it was worth. And now, what do we, 2006, we're 16 years later, they owe $320,000 on that house, and it's worth $1 million plus. So that's the value of not looking at it, of saying, we want to own a home. We want to live in this area. Jeb always talks about make sure you have a long time horizon, if not more than 5 years or not 7 years, at least 5 years, and say, just make a good decision, a home that's going to fit your needs for 5+ years, and you're probably going to be very unlikely to get on the wrong side of any market correction.
Yeah, I think, especially with the internet and the fact that anybody can say anything and you just don't know where they're coming from, and people love chaos. And if it bleeds, it leads. And we have all of these conversations about interest rates and mortgages, but the fundamentals are, when you fix your living costs in a 30-year fixed mortgage, the values may go up and down, but you're also mitigating against changes or surprises in your expenses. Your household expenses, a large percentage of them, your living expenses, are fixed, and you can ride through any of these things. And markets are always cyclical. They're always going to go up and down. It's been anomalous since the crash, right? And there's a lot of government intervention, and it's not as predictable, and the cycles aren't as fast as they were before. They used to be 5 or 7 years. Now we're going on, decades, but it's going to go back down, and it's going to go back up forever. So cutting through all of the bull and everybody thinking that they have an opinion and that they want everybody to hear it, at the end of the day, the conversation we as professionals need to have with consumers is that fixing your housing cost is going to mitigate against any crash or rates going up or down. So fix it now. If you can make the monthly payment, if they go down, fantastic, you get a lower rate. If they go up, who cares? You already have a house and you're in a 30-year fix. If your home value goes down, who cares? You're not selling it. Equity is only important if you're selling it and you're trying to walk away with a bag of cash. If you're just trying to live there and stabilize yourself in your community and keep your family safe and sound and all this stuff, fixing it now is always the right answer. None of that other stuff matters. If the market gets worse, it doesn't impact you. If it gets better, you can take advantage of it.
The reason why the majority, you're 100% correct, Scott, and the reason why the majority of Americans, 65% plus of households over time, will choose owning is that, imagine, flash forward yourself. So none of us are getting any younger, but the four of us, flash forward 20 to 40 years, and you're 75 years old. Do you want to figure out how you're going to make your rent payment, whatever rent payments may be 30 years from now, while you're retired? No, you want to fix as many variables as you can heading into retirement. So yeah, you can't fix your taxes and homeowners insurance, but you can fix the mortgage payment, which is the biggest portion of that, and not be subject to rent increases. You're also going to have forced savings for the next 30 years of a portion of your payment going to principal and reducing that. And even if homes don't increase at the rate that they have, 5 to 7% that they have the last 50 years, if they go up 3% a year, a home today, your rule of 72, in 24 years, it's going to double. So, I mean, it's crazy as that sounds, we've doubled our home values here, just in the last 10 years. So it's coming off of a really low level into a really hot market, but 24 years for another doubling is pretty reasonable. And if you look at it, and the house that you think is insane, that's $1 million house, in 25 years, it's going to be a $2 million house, and you'll wish you had bought it for $1 million and paid it down to $400,000.
Right. Well, so this actually gives us a really good kind of wrapping up point, because the topic was not only, hey, what's going to happen? Let's predict the market for 2022. The topic is really from a sales and marketing perspective, and Scott really hit the nail. Like, how do you message this? Well, you got to message it from the perspective of think differently, right? Everyone's freaking out about equity. Everyone's freaking out about home prices. Everyone's freaking about what's going to happen with interest rates. And you guys are all saying, nope, lock this stuff in, play a long game, have a long time horizon. Understand that, if you can afford it, it's going to be a good bet. And in terms of the fundamentals of the market, the fundamentals are sound, high level, and just keep hammering that message home.
Yep. And know the numbers, because someone pushes back if you don't know these numbers, if you don't know where to get them. I mean, Google's an amazing thing. Any chart, stat, number you need is there. You just need to know where to get them. So if we're sitting here making the argument, and Dustin's a borrower of mine and a buyer of Jeb's, and he pushes back and goes, that's crazy. Well, Dustin, I don't have the chart in front of me. Give me an hour and I can have it in your inbox. The numbers exist, and the long game is the solution to everything. Don't overextend yourself to buy. Don't buy a crazy house that doesn't meet your needs for 5 to 7+ years, and play the long game, exactly like you guys said.
Most importantly, tune in to Jeb and Josh every Wednesday on YouTube Live and ask any question that you want.
Well, Jeb and I have a new project. We liked you guys podcasting so much that in addition to the live every Wednesday from 5 to 7 on Jeb's YouTube channel at Jeb Smith, we have The Educated Homebuyer, which you can find at theeducatedhomebuyer.com. And that is on all of your major channels, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, all that fun stuff, wherever you want to go to find a podcast.
And we're talking a lot about this stuff, right? In just more detail. So it's not a YouTube video cut out and just taking the audio. We're actually having a conversation, Josh and I, touching on some key topics that people are concerned with and trying to help navigate people in a crazy world. So check it out.
Amazing.
It's really, really good. It's really good.
One more time, what's the URL?
Theeducatedhomebuyer.com. And you can search that. Yep. Search that on Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff, and you'll come across it.
Fantastic. All right. Well, you can find Scott over at findmywayhome.com. He's doing some really great stuff, especially if you're in the mortgage lending business. I don't know if I said that right. What do you guys call your industry? I don't even know what you call yourselves.
Good, that's close enough.
Yeah.
Mortgage lending business.
I'm a pro. Calm down, guys. So if you're in that business, they've got some really great marketing tools they're doing over there. Go check them out, findmywayhome.com. You can find my team over at lighthouseescrow.com. We'd love to work with you if you're a California home buyer or seller and are looking for refinance or sale services. We are happy to provide those escrow services to you. All right, guys. Thanks so much as always. It's been fun.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Till next time,
Yeah.
It's been the Marketing Trench.